I watched her smile as he took her hand, and my stomach twisted. There was something about the way he looked at her that made me uneasy. I remembered how he had this cocky grin and said all the right things, but deep down, I felt like he was trouble. Just a week later, he stood in front of me, looking desperate. His eyes were wide and pleading as he asked for a job. I couldn't help but smile a little. It felt like karma. Betrayal hit me like a lightning bolt. One moment, we were best friends, and the next, she chose him. My heart smashed into pieces. "How could you?" I yelled, my voice shaking. I thought we'd a strong bond, built on trust, but now I felt lost. I tried everything to feel better. Writing in my journal helped a little, and talking to my friends was okay, but I still felt like a storm was brewing inside me. Jealousy clawed at my insides. I was stuck in a loop of anger and sadness. I need to protect myself, I told myself. Setting boundaries became a must, but letting go felt impossible. Days turned into a blur. I knew I'd to find my way back to myself. "You can do this," I whispered, starting my journey of self-love. I learned that sometimes you grow from the hardest moments. I began to face my jealousy head-on. "You're not going to control me," I declared, pushing those feelings aside. Slowly, I started finding joy again. I dived into hobbies that made me smile and hung out with friends who lifted me up. It was hard, but I realized that betrayal could spark change. It taught me how strong I could be. I began to see that moving on wasn't just about forgetting. It was about opening the door to new beginnings and learning how to trust again. Then, one day, I ran into her. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, her eyes pleading. "But you did," I shot back, feeling the fire of my heartache. I stood my ground, knowing I'd the power to choose my path now. But how could she be so happy with him? I watched her laugh with Jake, the new boyfriend, and it hurt. Deep inside, it felt like a betrayal, a reminder of what we had. While she moved on, I was stuck in a whirlwind of worry. I could see something off about him, but she was blind to it. Jake looked strong and confident, like he owned the room. But I noticed little things, how he looked at her too closely, how he smiled too wide. My gut twisted. I wanted to protect her, to shout my fears, but what if I was wrong? What if I was just being jealous? The thought of losing her made me freeze. I had to keep my cool and figure this out. I couldn't let my feelings control me, so I watched them closely, looking for signs. Each laugh they shared felt like a move in a dangerous game. I'd to be smart. Every little detail could reveal the truth. But every time she smiled, my heart cracked a little more. I'd to be careful, not just for me, but for her too. Would she ever see the real Jake? Or would I have to stand by and watch her get hurt? The tension grew, and I was standing on the edge of a choice that could change everything. "Hey, do you really trust him?" I finally blurted out one day, my voice shaking. Her laughter faded. "What do you mean?" "I just think he mightn't be who he seems," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. She frowned, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. "You don't know him like I do. But I see how he acts." "Just promise me you'll be careful," I urged, my heart pounding. She sighed, and I could feel the distance growing. My instincts screamed that Jake was trouble. I'd to figure out how to protect her without pushing her away. Time was running out, and the stakes were higher than ever. The first time I saw Jake, it hit me like a punch. He'd this charm that pulled everyone in, especially with that smile. But deep down, I felt something wasn't right. Jealousy bubbled inside me, mixed with a fierce need to protect her. I watched him hold her hand, and it felt wrong, like he was marking his territory. As they laughed together, a knot twisted in my stomach. Was Jake really who he looked like? I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that his charm hid something darker. Red flags flashed in my mind, screaming for attention. I wanted to yell at her to be careful, but I held back. What if she thought I was just being jealous? But I couldn't ignore my instincts. I'd to keep my eyes on him. If he was trouble, I needed to be ready. Every time I saw her smile at him, it felt like a stab in the heart. She was blind to the signs. "He's not good for you," I wanted to shout. Instead, I just clenched my fists, watching them. I felt urgency racing through me. I'd to find out who Jake really was before it was too late. I took a deep breath and decided to confront him. "Hey, Jake, what's your deal?" I called out, forcing my voice steady. He turned, a smirk playing on his lips. "What do you mean?" he replied, eyes glinting with mischief. "Just be careful with her," I warned, glaring at him. He laughed, brushing it off. "Relax, I've got everything under control." But something about his tone sent chills down my spine. I knew this wasn't over. I'd to dig deeper. As I watched her smile at Jake, my heart sank. It felt heavy, like a rock in my chest. Love can turn into a trap, and I could see it happening right in front of me. Jake held her too tight, making his affection feel more like a prison. She was so caught up in his charm that she didn't see the warning signs waving like crazy. Jake was sneaky. His emotional tricks were hard to spot, but they hit deep. I felt our friendship slipping as jealousy twisted inside me. It hurt to see someone I cared about fall into his snare of love mixed with control. I wanted to help her escape, but what if I pushed her away instead? Every day, I watched her fade. She was stuck in a cycle of hurt and recovery. I wished she could see the truth, but I worried that if I said something, it would only drive us apart. I knew people often had to face their own battles to grow stronger, but I didn't want her to suffer more than she'd to. It was tough to shake off jealousy and anger. I'd to remind myself I was strong. Still, it felt like I was fighting a war I couldn't win. I hoped she'd find the guts to break away from Jake and find her happiness. But until that happened, I was stuck under the weight of toxic love. It was heavy, suffocating, and it crushed my heart. "Are you okay?" I finally asked her one day, my voice shaky. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine," but I could see the truth hidden behind her smile. I'd to act. "Jake isn't good for you. You deserve better," I said, my heart racing. "Stop. You don't know him like I do," she snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. I stepped back, surprised. "But I care about you. Can't you see he's controlling you?" She looked away, biting her lip. I need to figure this out myself." That stung. I felt the distance grow between us as I watched her turn back to Jake, who was watching us with a smirk. The fear gripped me. Would she ever break free from him? I knew I'd to be there for her, even if it hurt. Watching them together felt like a punch in the gut. Each laugh they shared hit me like a knife. I couldn't look away. She seemed so happy, but I could see the cracks in their relationship. Jake had this charm that felt fake, like he was hiding something bad. I noticed how he'd hold her too tight, like he was scared someone else would take her away. It made me feel jealous, a feeling I hated. I was stuck in a messy friendship. How could I keep her safe without ruining everything? My mind was a storm. I wanted to shout the truth, but I knew I'd to work on myself first. I needed to be stronger, even though my heart felt heavy. Every time I saw them together, doubt flooded my mind. Was I just being jealous? Was I overreacting? I felt trapped in a never-ending cycle of pain. I wanted her to see the truth about Jake, but I was scared my words would only push her away. Each moment felt like I was slipping away from her. Watching her with Jake was like seeing a car crash in slow motion. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see the danger before it consumed her whole. "Can't you see what he's doing?" I wanted to yell. But the words caught in my throat. I needed her to find her strength, to break free before it was too late. I wouldn't give up. Not now. Even though Jake had a huge smile and made everyone laugh, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something bad. My best friend, Lily, was totally smitten, but I sensed that he'd sneaky plans. I watched him toy with her feelings, spinning a web of lies that made her weak. Every time I saw her grin at him, my stomach twisted. She was so trusting, so blind to the cracks in his charming act. I saw how he twisted his words, making her think he was the perfect guy. But I noticed the signs of him playing with her heart, and it made me feel sick. Jake's fake charm only made my trust issues flare up. I started questioning everything. How could Lily not see the truth? I wanted to shout, to show her who he really was, But what if I was wrong? What if I was just jealous? Still, a fire inside me pushed me to dig deeper. I'd to protect her from this guy who saw her as a prize, not a partner. Watching his mask slip made me feel desperate and determined. I needed to find a way to show Lily the real Jake without ruining our friendship. Time was ticking, and I knew I'd to act fast. One day, I caught Jake whispering sweet nothings to Lily. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me," he said, his eyes glinting. I clenched my fists, ready to burst, but I took a deep breath. "Lily, can we talk?" I pulled her aside, my heart racing. "I need to tell you something about Jake." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Just promise me you'll listen." I took a step closer, my voice low. "He's not who you think he is. I see how he plays with your heart." Lily's eyes widened. "You're just jealous." "No, I'm trying to protect you." I felt the weight of my words. "He's manipulating you, and it's not right." Her face turned serious, and I hoped she'd finally see the truth. "You think so?" Before I could answer, Jake appeared, his smile like a mask. "What's going on here?" he asked, feigning innocence. I swallowed hard, knowing I'd to keep fighting. "I'm just looking out for her," I said, glaring at him. He smirked. "Well, you should let her decide for herself. Isn't that what friends do?" When Jake walked into my office, I couldn't believe it. The guy who'd stolen Lily's heart was here, asking for a job. It felt like a punch in the gut. How could he be so bold? He stood there, all charming and confident, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. It was almost satisfying, knowing he needed my help after what he did to her. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my cool. Once, he was the hero in Lily's story, but now, he was just a guy with bills piling up and nowhere to turn. I listened as he spilled his troubles. Rent due, no money, and no other options. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but all I could think about was how he'd treated Lily. That anger bubbled up again, pushing any sympathy aside. "Why should I help you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You had everything, and you tossed it away." I enjoyed watching him squirm. This was my moment to take control. He couldn't just take what he wanted and walk away without facing consequences. Jake looked at me, frustration etched on his face. "I messed up, okay? I need this job." His voice was shaky, but I wasn't moved. I could refuse him and let him wallow in his own mess. But a part of me wanted him to know what it felt like to be at someone else's mercy. "Let's talk," I said, a smirk creeping onto my face. This was more than just a job request. It was my chance to show him that I held the power. Now, the tables had turned, and I was ready to make him understand the true meaning of betrayal. As I sat at my desk, I could feel Jake's presence hanging in the air. This job wasn't just a paycheck for him. It was my chance to take back control. His request hit me like a wave. He thought he could stroll in, flash that charming smile, and get what he wanted. But I was on to him. I saw his true colors shining through. Jake wasn't just another guy looking for a job. He was the guy who'd broken my best friend's heart, and now he needed me. A rush of power surged through me. I'd the upper hand. I could flip the script and make him depend on me. Every moment at the office felt like a game of chess. I watched him carefully, noting how he interacted with everyone. He played the part of the perfect employee, but I knew better. His desperation was my weapon, and I could use it to show everyone who he really was. This job was my shield, my way to protect my friend and take back what he tried to steal. I'd to be careful. The stakes were high. I was ready to make my move. "Hey, Jake," I said, leaning back in my chair with a smirk. "Need help with that project?" He looked surprised. Yeah, I could use a hand." I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I'll help you, but remember, I'm not your friend." His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I shrugged, feeling a mix of excitement and caution. "Let's just say you're not the only one playing a game here." With every word, I felt the thrill of the chase. I was ready to show him just how powerful I could be. every time I saw Jake, a chill ran down my spine. He had this creepy charm that made me uneasy. How could she trust someone like him? I kept thinking about my own heartbreak and how it made me doubt everyone. Next to Jake's flashy smile, I felt so small. I came up with a plan. I needed a way to take back control. The idea of revenge became my strength. Day after day, I watched him, waiting for the perfect moment to show her the truth about him. He wasn't worthy of her love, and I was determined to prove it. But I'd to play it smart. If I acted too quickly, I could lose her forever. The friendship we'd built felt like it was on shaky ground. I wanted to protect her, but I started to wonder if I was really doing it for her, or just to heal my own hurt. I tried to play it cool at work, but I couldn't shake the bad feeling I'd about Jake. From day one, something felt wrong. His charming smile was just a cover for sneaky behavior that made my alarm bells go off. I started to notice little things, like how he always avoided eye contact, especially when people asked about his past. Those were big red flags. Jake was a master at playing with people's feelings. He could win anyone over, but I caught glimpses of his true self. He'd snap at co-workers over tiny mistakes, showing that he didn't really care about anyone but himself. Watching him get close to my friend made my stomach twist. She was blind to the warning signs, and I worried for her. Every day, I felt like I was walking a tightrope. Jake had a way of getting too close, leaning in during chats and making my skin crawl. I wanted to shout at her to open her eyes, but I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if my fears were just jealousy talking? Frustration bubbled inside me. I needed to save her, but how could I do that without pushing her away? I felt trapped between my instincts and the fear of looking like the bad guy. Deception was everywhere, and I'd to watch my step. One day, I saw Jake corner my friend in the break room. "You're the best," he said, flashing that same charming smile. But when she turned away, his expression darkened. "Don't forget who really cares about you," he snapped. My heart raced. This was it. I'd to act. "Hey, can we talk?" I pulled my friend aside, my voice shaky but urgent. "I'm worried about Jake." Her eyes widened, and I held my breath. "Why? He's great!" She crossed her arms, defensive. "Just trust me." "He's not who you think he is," I pleaded. "He's hiding something. Please, be careful." She frowned, but I could see the doubt creeping in. "You could be wrong," she said, but I caught the flicker of fear in her eyes. "I hope I am, but I can't just stand by." I stepped back, my heart pounding. I'd to let her figure it out, but I wouldn't stop watching. As I left, I felt the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders. I'd thrown the truth at her, but the battle was far from over. Betrayal felt like a heavy weight on my chest, and every time I saw my friend with Jake, it was like walking through a minefield. I was in a storm of mixed emotions. It hurt to watch her laugh with him, knowing he'd taken her heart away. I wanted to be a good friend, but jealousy twisted inside me like a snake. "Why him?" I muttered under my breath, watching them share a secret smile. It felt like a knife in my heart. I was on a mission to figure out what I really felt. Was I being supportive or just bitter? I wanted to shout at her, to make her see the truth about Jake. But what if I looked like the bad guy? What if he's not as great as he seems? I thought, my mind racing. I was scared of losing her completely. The more I watched them, the more trapped I felt. Every laugh they shared was another reminder of what I was losing. "Hey, can we talk?" I finally blurted out one day, my hands shaking. She turned, surprised. "About what?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "About Jake." "I just don't trust him," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She crossed her arms. "You don't even know him." "I know enough. He's not good for you," I shot back, my heart racing. Her eyes narrowed, and I could see anger flickering there. "You're just jealous," she snapped. Maybe I was, but I didn't care. I just wanted her back. The tension between us crackled like electricity. "Just give me a chance to show you," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. She hesitated, but then walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling more lost than ever. The cycle of jealousy and fear twisted tighter around me. I needed to break free, but how? As I watched her fade into the crowd with him, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. I was ready to fight for her, but at what cost? Would I end up losing her for good? The emotional conflict twisted deeper, and I braced myself for the battle ahead. I was determined to find out the truth about Jake. One night after work, I decided to follow him. My heart pounded as I walked. I felt that something was off with him, and I couldn't shake the jealousy that twisted my thoughts. I needed to protect my friend from any hurt he might cause. As I followed him, fear and anger bubbled inside me. Jake was acting shady. I spotted him in a dark park, whispering and laughing with a girl. My instincts screamed at me. What if he was tricking her? Did she know how he manipulated people? With every step, my emotions churned. Should I confront him? What if I was wrong? I couldn't let jealousy cloud my judgment, but I couldn't just stand by while he hurt someone. Then I heard Jake laugh, and it sent chills down my spine. I strained to listen for clues. I watched as he leaned in close to her. It felt too intimate, too familiar. Betrayal stabbed at my heart. I'd to find out if I was right. I couldn't back down now. I needed to uncover the secrets he was hiding. Suddenly, I stepped on a twig, and it snapped loudly. Jake turned, his smile fading as he spotted me. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice sharp. "I came to see the truth," I shot back, my anger bubbling over. The girl looked confused, and Jake's expression changed to one of annoyance. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said, trying to brush me off. But I wasn't going to let him. "You're not fooling anyone, Jake. I know you're playing games." His eyes narrowed. "You think you know me? You don't know anything." Fear squeezed my heart as I stared at Jake. I'd to face the truth about him, and it felt like walking into a pitch-black room. Relationships can get messy, especially when trust is on the line. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was on a quest to understand not just him, but myself too. What if I was wrong? Jake was charming, but I saw the warning signs. The way he held my friend's hand was too tight, too controlling. I felt a surge of protectiveness. I'd to look out for her, even if it meant risking our friendship. I knew talking to him wouldn't be easy. I wanted to scream, but what if he twisted my words? I'd seen him play mind games before. I couldn't let that happen again. I needed to confront him, but how? Time felt like it was running out. My heart raced. I'd stood by long enough. Confronting Jake meant putting everything on the line, but I couldn't let him hurt her. I'd to do it, not just for her, but for me. "Jake!" I shouted, my voice sharp and clear. He turned, surprise flashing in his eyes. "We need to talk." He smirked, but I saw a flicker of something darker. "About what?" he asked, crossing his arms. "About you and how you treat my friend," I shot back. "You're too controlling. It's not okay." He laughed, but it didn't sound real. "You're just jealous. She likes me." "No, she deserves better," I insisted, stepping closer. "You can't keep her like a toy." His eyes narrowed. "You don't know anything about us." "Then prove me wrong," I challenged. "Stop pretending you care." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then he stepped forward, his face inches from mine. "You're making a mistake." But I wasn't backing down. "No, you are. This ends now." The tension crackled between us, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was ready to fight for my friend, ready to expose the truth behind his charming facade. It was time to take a stand. I stared at my phone, my stomach in knots. I'd to make a call that could change everything. Should I protect her or keep quiet? I took a deep breath and dialed her number, my heart racing. When she picked up, her cheerful voice hit me like a punch. "Hey, how are you?" she said, excitement in her tone. I froze, my words heavy in my throat. "I need to talk to you about Jake," I finally blurted out, my voice trembling. The mood changed instantly. The warmth in her voice disappeared. "What about him?" she asked, suspicion creeping in. I felt the tension grow like a balloon ready to pop. I've seen things. Things that worry me, I struggled to say, tripping over my words. You're just jealous, she yelled, her anger stabbing at me. My heart sank. I'd thought I was helping, but now I felt like the bad guy. We argued, and the silence between us thickened. I wanted to scream, to make her see the truth, but all I got was her disbelief. I felt desperate, knowing I might lose her forever. I ended the call, feeling hollow and defeated. The call ended with a heavy silence that felt like a huge gap between us. I was stunned by the betrayal. I'd always trusted her, but now those trust issues were glaring at me like stop signs. I felt foolish for not seeing how Jake had played her. He'd spun a web of lies, and she was caught, blinded by his charm. I could see the warning signs flapping like flags, but she just ignored them. It hurt to watch her get tangled in this toxic mess. The signs of betrayal were all around, yet she couldn't see them. My loyalty as a friend was on the line, and I felt my heart breaking at the thought of losing her. I wanted to save her, but what if I was just being jealous? Days turned into weeks, and I started to think hard about everything. Was I really trying to help her? Or was I just mad that she'd pushed me away? I needed to find a way to heal my own heart while trying to pull her from the darkness. As I wrestled with these feelings, I realized that sometimes pain teaches us important lessons. I'd to stand up for what was right, even if it meant risking our friendship. I couldn't let her drown in this sea of betrayal. I'd to reach out and grab her hand before it was too late. "Listen to me," I shouted one day, catching her off guard. "Jake isn't who you think he is. You need to open your eyes." Her gaze dropped, but I could see the doubt creeping in. I knew I'd to fight for her. I couldn't let the darkness win, not while I still had a chance to save my friend. While I tried to focus on my work, Jake's weird behavior was impossible to ignore. I saw the changes in him right away. His friendly smile turned into a scowl, and he snapped at me for no reason. It felt like he was trying to show he was in charge, over me and everything around us. His mood swings were scary. I could tell he got jealous when he thought I was too close to her. I felt the trust between us slipping away, thick tension filling the air. Was he trying to control me? It seemed like he was always testing how far he could push me. I tried to tell myself it was just work stress, but I knew it was worse. Jake's need to control everything was obvious, and it frightened me. I sensed he was losing control, and I felt stuck in the middle of his chaos. I wanted to warn her about him. But how could I? Would she even listen? Each day, I kept a close eye on Jake, waiting for him to go too far. I knew the truth was hiding under his charming smile, and I'd to find it before it was too late. "Why are you talking to her?" he snapped one day, his eyes burning with jealousy. "You're mine, remember? Jake, it's just a conversation," I replied, my heart racing. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" he shot back, his voice low and dangerous. I knew I'd to figure out what was really going on with him. The clock was ticking, and I could feel the danger. Creeping closer, Jake's mood was getting worse every day, and I could feel the tension like a storm brewing. At work, it was hard to ignore him. His charming smile was gone, replaced by a dark scowl. He snapped at me over the smallest things, and I could tell he was angry all the time. I couldn't help but think about her. How could she not see what was happening? It felt like he wanted to control everything, even her. A knot twisted in my stomach. Every time I looked at him, I saw danger hiding in his eyes. I was watching his manipulation unfold, and it made me furious. One day, I overheard him on the phone. His voice dripped with lies, and I felt panic rise in me. I wanted to warn her, to save her from this awful relationship, but what if I was wrong? What if I was just being jealous? The tension between us made it hard to decide. I feared that if I said anything, she might turn away from me. Each day felt heavier than the last. I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, unsure of what to do. I'd to protect her, but every step felt risky, like walking on a tightrope. I needed to be careful. "Are you okay?" I asked Jake one afternoon, trying to break the ice. Why do you care? He shot back, his voice cold. That stung. I wanted to scream, to make him see how wrong he was. Instead, I bit my tongue. I was afraid of what he might do next. I glanced at her, wishing she could see the truth about him, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. A storm was brewing, and I could feel it deep inside. I'd finally hit my limit. Jake's smug grin was too much to handle, and I couldn't let him keep playing with her heart. It was time to confront him. My heart raced as I thought about how to do it. I'd to expose him, but I couldn't lose my cool. The next day, I found him after work. Tension hung in the air like a thick fog. My stomach twisted with nerves. We need to talk, I said, trying to sound tough. He raised an eyebrow, that infuriating smirk plastered on his face. What's wrong? Jealous? He taunted. Not even close, I shot back, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. I know you're using her. Sooner or later, she'll see the real you. He laughed, but it felt cold and empty. You think you can scare me? You're just a pawn in this game. Fear nagged at me, but I stood tall. You don't know what you're up against. I'll protect her. He stepped closer, his eyes dark and dangerous. Watch yourself. You have no idea who you're messing with. A chill ran through me. I'd crossed a line, and now I'd to deal with the fallout. My heart raced as I realized this was just the beginning of our battle. As I turned away from Jake, a heavy knot twisted in my stomach. His threat replayed in my mind like a broken record. I never knew I could feel so scared, so betrayed. I'd to take back my power. No more letting him mess with my feelings. Finding closure felt impossible, but I knew I'd to change things between us. Jealousy was a monster, and I couldn't let it eat me alive. I'd to focus on myself and what really mattered, my happiness. It was time to build a wall around my heart to keep out the poison Jake brought. I told myself to be strong and independent. I needed to clear my head and let go of all that anger. Carrying it around was tiring. I realized I'd to face Jake, not just for me, but for my friend, too. So I started making better choices. I kept my distance from Jake, not because I was scared, but to keep my peace. Each day I reminded myself that I was tougher than his tricks. I could beat this. I pictured a future where I could breathe freely, far away from his control. In the end, standing up to Jake was about more than just my friend. It was about me. I wouldn't be a piece in his game anymore. I was ready to rise above and claim the freedom I craved. Even though I tried to focus on my own life, Jake was like a dark shadow, always hanging around. I could feel the power shifting. He was charming, sure, but I could sense the manipulation beneath that smile. It felt like he was playing a game, and I was just a pawn. Every time we talked, it was like a test. I watched him sneak into her life, making her depend on him. He'd say sweet things, but there was a mean side lurking, ready. To pull her down, I wanted to scream at her. Don't you see what he's doing? But who'd believe me? I'd just look like a jealous ex. Each day, I felt more desperate. I'd to protect her, but how? Jake's laughter echoed in my head, teasing me. I wanted to confront him, to show everyone his tricks. But the more time passed, the more I felt powerless. It was like he was pulling strings, not just with her, but with me too. I was stuck in his web, and I needed to break free. I'd to find a way to take back control and stop this power struggle before it was too late. Why are you letting him do this to you? I whispered one day, watching her smile at him. He's just being nice, she replied, her eyes sparkling. Nice? It's a trap. You can't see it. She frowned, and I could tell she was confused. I'd to act fast. Jake was winning this game, and I couldn't let him take her down. I needed a plan, something bold, to show her the truth before she got hurt. Whenever I questioned my instincts, doubt sneaked in like a thief. I felt torn between wanting to protect her and the memories we shared. Each doubt whispered that maybe I was wrong. Was I just jealous of her happiness with Jake? I wrestled with these thoughts, wondering if I was stuck in my own pain, in those quiet moments. I discovered the truth about shifting loyalties. I hoped my loyalty to her was stronger than my feelings. But every time I saw her smile at him, a storm brewed inside me. Could I trust my instincts? My trust in her choices dangled by a thread, and I feared losing her to Jake. I thought about making a bold move to intervene, but would that push her away? Part of me wanted to shout, to reveal the truth I believed hid behind Jake's charm. But what if I was wrong? That uncertainty weighed heavily on me. I'd to choose to act or stay quiet, and each choice felt risky. In those moments of doubt, everything felt like it mattered. I stood frozen, caught between love and betrayal, desperate to save her from heartache. "Why him?" I shouted one day, my voice trembling. "You don't see what he's really like." She looked at me, confusion in her eyes. "What are you talking about? Jake makes me happy." "Happy? Or just distracted?" I shot back, frustration boiling over. She crossed her arms, defensive. "You're just jealous. You want me to stay stuck in the past." A chill ran through me. Was that all I was? Just a shadow of what we had? I'd to act fast. "I won't let him hurt you," I said, my voice steady, determined. As I plotted my next move, I knew the stakes were high. Heartache loomed, and I was ready to fight for her. Every moment counted, and I was about to make a choice that would change everything. I was just trying to get through the day when everything changed. Out of nowhere, Jake walked into my office. I couldn't believe my eyes. The guy who'd broken my best friend's heart was now here, looking lost and desperate. It felt like a scene from a movie, but this was real, and it was my life. "What do you want, Jake?" I asked, crossing my arms. His charm was gone, replaced by a nervous stutter as he explained his money problems. I felt a rush of power. This was my chance to expose him, to tell my friend the truth about the guy who'd hurt her. But what if my actions only made things worse for her? "Please, I need this job," Jake pleaded, his eyes wide. I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I also felt something darker lurking behind his words. He was trying to pull at my heartstrings, but I wasn't falling for it. "You think I'll just give you a job after what you did?" I shot back, my anger bubbling inside. He flinched at my words, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. I'd the upper hand, but it didn't feel good. I needed to protect my friend, but was I becoming the villain in this story? "I'm not the same guy anymore," he insisted, desperation dripping from his words. I wanted to laugh. How could he think I'd believe him? But instead, I stayed quiet, weighing my options. If I confronted him, it might ruin everything. "Talk, Jake." "But know this, I'm not your friend," I said, keeping my voice steady. He opened his mouth to say something, but the truth hung in the air like a storm cloud. Then, just as I thought I'd him cornered, he threw a curveball. "If you don't help me, I'll lose everything," he breathed, his voice shaking. My heart raced. Was he really this desperate, or was this just another one of his tricks? I took a deep breath, trying to think straight. The stakes were high, and I was walking a dangerous line. Jake had no idea what I was really thinking, and honestly, neither. Did I? Every small step felt big. I found happiness in simple moments, like sharing jokes with friends or watching the sky turn orange at sunset. I learned that moving forward meant letting go, even when it stung. It wasn't easy, but I grew stronger. Heartbreak taught me important lessons. I realized that love can hurt, but it can also help you grow. If you're feeling lost, remember, moving on is possible. Embrace the journey and believe that better days are coming. It was time to decide. Would I save my friend from potential heartbreak, or would I let her face the truth on her own? The weight of my decision felt like a storm cloud hanging over me. I was stuck between wanting to protect my friend and my own feelings of betrayal. Seeing her laugh with Jake was like a knife twisting in my chest. I knew I needed to toughen up and get through this hurt. I'd to focus on growing stronger instead of just feeling sad. As I faced this mess, I learned more about myself. I realized my value wasn't tied to her choices or his actions. Finding closure became crucial. I'd to accept that the love weed was different now, and I needed to figure out what love meant for me. I couldn't let jealousy control me anymore. It was draining me. Rebuilding trust was important, not just with her, but with myself too. I'd to forgive myself for feeling this way and open up to change. I started to see that friendships need honesty, even when it's hard. Sometimes friends make choices we don't like, and that's just part of life. This whole experience showed me how to beat jealousy. Instead of letting it take over, I found strength in letting go. I reminded myself that her happiness didn't lessen my worth. I could be a good friend without losing my own peace. In the end, I came out stronger, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead. This journey wasn't just about her, it was about me stepping into a brighter future. Why are you with him? I confronted her one day, my voice shaking with anger. She looked surprised. I thought you'd be happy for me. Happy? After everything? I shot back, frustration bubbling inside me. I'm doing what feels right for me, she replied, her tone defensive. I took a deep breath, realizing this was my moment. You have to choose. But don't expect me to stand by and watch you get hurt. As I walked away, I felt a mix of anger and relief. I was done hiding behind my feelings. No more toxic love, no more manipulation. It was time for me to reclaim my life. Heartbreak hit me, like a brick wall. One minute I was happy, and the next I was drowning in sadness. I'd to figure out how to move on. It was tough, but I knew I'd to try. I woke up every morning feeling heavy, but I decided I wouldn't let that sadness win. I focused on bouncing back. I started with little things. I went for walks to clear my head, read books that made me smile, and hung out with friends who made me laugh. I felt the hurt, but I didn't let it swallow me whole. Finding closure was tricky. I'd to accept that some stories end suddenly, and that was okay. I began a journey of self-love, telling myself that my worth wasn't about someone else's choices. I worked on trusting myself again.